Meanwhile, a petition calling for Putin to face a war crimes trial is going viral, with more than 1.5 million people signing it from right around the world. Well, the campaign was launched just 8 days ago, with organisers hoping to convince the International Criminal Court to begin proceedings against the Kremlin. Well, it comes as the ICC's chief prosecutor earlier this month opened a separate investigation into potential Russian war crimes over its invasion of Ukraine. Well, neither Russia or Ukraine are members of the ICC. Let's now bring in ex-CIA intelligence officer and psychiatrist Dr. Charles Morgan. Good evening, Dr. Morgan. Thank you very much for your time. Look, we've been hearing all of this talk with people saying that Mr. Putin has lost his mind. You know, in your opinion, is that true? Break down for us how you see his mental state.
Well, to start off, no, I don't think he's lost his mind. It's really common when world leaders behave in which we don't want them to behave, from either the West standpoint or the United States standpoint. We find ways of either saying what they're doing is evil or there must be something wrong with them. So there's a very quick run to assume that someone's mentally ill or irrational when they behave in ways that we don't agree with. And we get that in forensic psych a lot. You know, when you hear in the news about a murder or something, people think the person who did it must be insane, and they're not always that. The same is true for world leaders. There's usually a rationale to how they're moving, how they're making decisions, because it's in order to achieve a goal that they want. So we have to look at behavior over time and put it in context. More recently, like on TikTok and things like that, people are saying maybe he has Parkinson's or maybe he has cancer, or maybe these are reasons why he's not thinking clearly. With respect to the movements that he has, the fidgeting, the wriggling, those have been around for decades. And usually when he's in conversations where he's having a disagreement with someone, they certainly aren't classic right now of Parkinson's. And with respect to his cognitive capacity, the clarity of it, the way he makes an argument, the way he can sustain his attention, and even try and coax people along to get on board with his idea, shows us that he doesn't have disorganized thinking that we might see if someone had mental illness. So for me, it's more useful to think of him from a personality standpoint. And if you like literature, he's a lot like, in my mind, Richard III. When you think about it from his upbringing, where he did suffer incredible hardship early on growing up. And I think he's someone who, once he finally became in power, was determined to restore either the Soviet or Russian Empire. And he's talked about this for decades, saying, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I think is right. And I'm going to restore the system. And I think for a long time, we've kind of said, yeah, he says that, but he wouldn't really do it. And I think the frustration we're seeing on the part of world leaders is he's doing what he said all along he was planning on doing. From a personality standpoint, he's very low in what we call tender-mindedness. Like, other people's feelings don't influence his decision-making. It's the factor we call agreeableness, or the Mr. Rogers versus Machiavelli factor. He's very much over there on the side of Machiavelli, where he'll lie when he has to. He doesn't have a high degree of trust. It takes a long time to get him to trust anyone. He's not that modest. He doesn't believe in playing collaboratively unless it's going to work for him. And he'll tell you what you need to hear to get what he wants. And he'll pay people back. He can be ruthless. What makes him especially dangerous is that he's also very high in the personality dimension we call conscientiousness. It's sort of that RoboCop factor. Can you be diligent? You have self-discipline. Can you wait and delay gratification to achieve your goals? And he's smart. So he is conniving. He plans. He thinks about things. So, and he's not generally impulsive. When you look at him over time, things seem pretty cool and calculated. And you have to admit, when someone goes from being president, or premier, then president, then back to premier, then back to president, he's been able to hold coalitions together and maintain relationships that serve his interests, which you can't do if you're more quixotic and impulsive. He's low in what we call typically emotional reactivity. You can see that in interviews over the years. he expresses some emotion, but he's not the world's biggest extrovert, and he's not all tied up in knots. Almost like if you think of George Costanza on Seinfeld or Jackie Gleason type characters, or think about Donald Trump, right? He's got thin skin. Putin doesn't have thin skin, but that doesn't mean he won't get angry. I think people who are low in agreeableness and they have goals, and he's a narcissist, but lots of world leaders are. Like he's got power.
On that, Dr. Morgan, can I just jump in here? You're talking about how he's sort of perceived and how much he wants sort of people to like him in a way. What about his inner circle? What about these oligarchs? What happens, to his mental state then if they turn on him? What can we expect there?
I think that's when we're going to see a reaction. I think that as long as he feels he can get what he wants, other people are useful to him, right? As long as you're useful to him, he likes you and he needs you. If he feels you owe him and then you turn on him, he's going to try and have revenge. I mean, we've seen him, we think, poison his opponents, right? So I think if the oligarchs turn on him, then we're going to see him lash out. I wouldn't be surprised if a rebellion came from within either the military or the intelligence community if the oligarchs separate from him. But the emotional reaction he'll be furious and he'll want to kill them off. I don't know if that'll only be figuratively, it might be literally. For people he perceives as being against him, he's been ruthless in the past. But I think that's been his power base, with respect to finances. Yeah. So as their support diminishes, I would expect him to become more irritable and more angry. But a narcissist who's on that Machiavellian end of the spectrum says, I'm mad, but boy, I'm going to try and get as even as I can, or I'm going to pull the whole house down with me. As if I have to go, I'm going to burn it down as I go. So I don't think he'll back down.
Given
they need a face-saving way of somehow getting out of the dilemma they're in.
And Dr. Morgan, we've got about a minute left. Given everything that you've told me, let's say all of this just continues, how on earth do you stop someone like this?
People like this are only stopped when they realize someone else has enough power to stop them. They don't respect anyone who appears weaker. So we do have to confront him directly. There may be multiple policy ways of doing that, but he's not going to back down. He has to have a way to be able to say, I won, and then take a different course of action. But if we can't give him one where he can say, okay, I won, and then find a different way, I think the confrontation will be even more direct.
Dr. Charles Morgan there, look, it's been so very interesting speaking to you this evening. Thank you so much for your time and for coming on. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.